We are live. We still got 5 minutes. My name's Travis Pangburn. You guys know that. This is Pangburn. Yeah, it's good to be with you all tonight. Um, Let me just send out a couple invites here. I'm going to just send out a quick tweet. Hope you guys are all well. I am live now. Giving away tickets now. Join us live. Tickets now for at Matt Dillahunty, the warrior for reason. And I've been going with Dinesh D'Souza, the theological wizard. What do you guys think of that? Is it lame? I think it's lame. Or what's a good name for Dinesh D'Souza? So we got Matt Dillahunty, the warrior for reason. What's a good wrestling name for Dinesh D'Souza? Dinesh D'Souza. Okay, here we go. Join us live. I'll tweet that out. I'm going to fire a reminder over to Dinesh and Matt. I would send a text, but that's going to take too long. Twitter. And I'll probably send an email. Thank you all for being with us tonight. Invite your friends. You know you wanna. I want to open this, and then I'm going to say, compose to Dinesh. I am live now. Tweet. All right, I'll forward that off. And this is going to be a lot of fun. Yes, we are continuing our watch parties. We are on part 4 of Sam Harris versus Jordan Peterson. And we are, I think, 28 minutes in. Say hi just so I know you guys are here and that you are hearing me. Oh, I got to stop this feed. Okay, there we go. And hit that like button on this stream. Definitely do that. Awesome. And I don't think it's going to let me go live here on Facebook again. Yeah, I need to get my laptop fixed. I have this massive Alienware something or other laptop. Amanda Rose Riley, welcome. Let's see who else we got here. Andrew T, welcome back. What's up? Robin Devgan, welcome. Yeah, I see we got some idiots already. They'll just be deleted and banned. We're going to get going here in a minute. I'm just sending out all my invites. All my invites. Just making sure that this is maxed. Okay, good. We are almost good to go. 17 of you listening. For those of you who haven't been here, we are continuing on with our watch parties. And our watch parties, we're just watching through events that I produced and that Pangburn produced, and just listening to the discussion, having discussions that are born from that, and also talking about some exciting updates that are going on at Pangburn. You will see, let's talk about the big event first. let's talk about. First, Amanda Rose Riley, welcome. You said hi. To be honest, I came here based on the giveaway tweet and don't really know where I am. Well, you are in the Pangburn Hub. And basically, I'm going to actually give you guys the link to the website instead of just giving you guys the cliff notes of what Pangburn is. Pang-burn.com. We promote intellectual discourse. I believe we should live in a world now where people can have discussions with their ideological opponents, enter the war of ideas with them, and have engage in civil discourse in good faith conversation. Not everything has to be about not everything has to be about slinging mud at each other or claiming someone's a racist or something like that. But yeah, if you go to the website, new website, pang-burn.com, you can find out more information about what we do. Yes, and you will see in the video, we have the poster of, should I make it bigger for just while we do this? Or is it? Screw it. We have the poster for Matt Dillahunty versus Dinesh D'Souza. Finally, this event is happening. I'm so excited for this. I think it's going to be both intellectuals' biggest challenge in their whole career, and fireworks are going to go off in this event. It's very exciting for me. This will be the first event I've produced in a year, and this is a great one to kick it off with. This will be in New York City, March 1st. And for those of you who are familiar with the Pangburn events, it'll be much like the Jordan Peterson and Matt Dillahunty conversation. This is not going to be a formal debate. This is going to be two guys sitting down, having a conversation about ideas. They're going to focus on, as kind of a governing idea for the event, they're going to focus on God, Trump, and the best foot forward for America. That's what we're going to be focusing on. Welcome back, Nick. And we'll see what kind of conversation is born from that. I think, like when it comes to both of these guys, there's going to be hurdles from both angles for both of these speakers to overcome. And I think one for Dinesh is Dinesh needs to accept whatever definition Matt Dillahunty is going to place his atheism under. Because I had Dinesh on for a podcast, and you guys can see that on YouTube. But I had Dinesh on for a podcast, and it was hard to get Dinesh to accept or at least say that my definition of atheism wasn't a cop-out. It just was what I meant by it. But I think Dinesh thinks that the definition of atheism that everyone uses, not that everyone uses it the same, but I'm saying that in the main schools of thought of atheism, what atheism is just the rejection of claims that gods exist. So, someone says, this God exists, Juju up on the mountain, this God exists, and then the atheist position is basically, okay, well, where's your evidence for this? And then they present what they believe to be sufficient evidence, and then the atheist says, well, I don't believe your claim because I don't think there's evidence to believe it. So they're not adopting a burden of proof. They're just saying, I don't believe your claim that gods exist. So that's what atheism is, and they're going to have to get over that hurdle of definitions, obviously. Hopefully when they start off this conversation and it's not, we're just talking past each other the whole conversation. But I think both these speakers and intellectuals are honest, interested in honest, good intellectual discourse, good faith discussion, and that's what I expect to happen between these two, philosophers and Dinesh as a fiery political commentator. Donald Trump's pit bull, and I think one of his pit bulls, and I think Matt is going to have to resist going after, when they're talking about Trump, he's going to have to resist just taking shots at Trump's character and actually bring some specific examples that Trump has actually done or decisions he's made and focus on those critiques. And obviously you can critique the character, but I think staying away too much of, like a lot of people say, like orange man bad, or like very, very entry level, like knocks on Donald Trump. I think there is more interesting, there are deeper levels that you can go when talking about Trump, and I hope that's where the conversation goes. And then finish it off with what the best foot forward for America is. If we reach, or when we reach 1,000 tickets sold, a live stream will be available. So if you guys are in New York or around New York and you can get there, I would suggest you pick up a ticket and join us, because I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I will get back to the chat after I'm just done these few announcements. You will see this new text that says the War of Ideas. I haven't made this public yet, and this will be kind of the first little blip about it, but the War of Ideas is an online publication that I'm starting, and we've already got the website in development for this, and I should be able to launch it pretty quickly because it's going to be very basic. It's going to be a very basic forum where people will put their claims up to see if their claims stand up to strong scrutiny. So basically, the War of Ideas will be carried out on this publication, this site, and we will also feature some writing. So if you're interested in being a contributor to the War of Ideas, which will be a new online publication, send an email to info. I'll type it in the chat section here. info@pang-burn.com. I am also looking for new contributors for our YouTube channel. I'm looking for someone to do videos on like hot topics that are happening in intellectualism or in philosophy and science as well. So basically anything that's that would be interesting to have discussions about. I'm interested in bringing on some people to help with some more video creation. Let me get to your guys' questions. I think those are the announcements. If you're not following me on Twitter, follow me at the Pangburn. I will follow you back if you send me a message, or if you tweet at me. And just make sure you guys hit the like on this stream. Let me just check if I got anything else that I need to get out there. And sorry, I just got a couple notifications here before we get going. All right. And what we're doing here today is we are just rewatching debates that I've produced, and we're just kind of going through them slow and having discussions about it. At about halftime today, about 50 minutes in, I will choose two winners to win a pair of tickets for the Matt Dillahunty versus Dinesh D'Souza event. And make sure you guys spread the word. I hope we have a really good house for that event. It's selling really well, so I'm excited about that. Let's see if we got anything. This will be fun. Jordan Clark says, "What do you mean by pitbull?" Oh, with Dinesh D'Souza. I would say Dinesh is a very fiery voice that's always out there to defend Donald Trump, and there aren't many loud voices like that in the way that Dinesh defends him constantly, and he attempts to put up good, strong arguments as to why Donald Trump is operating the way he is and why he thinks this is what America wants and things like that. I think he is, he's fiery. He's evangelical in the way that he defends Donald Trump, and I think that's a big part of his brand right now, and what he's known for, and when he's brought on TV as well. Okay, let's get cracking here. Let's see where we left off.
Apparently, the entire course of evolutionary history has conspired to produce human beings, and we could argue that it could have been different, but it certainly hasn't been different. And that means that that selective spirit of the Father has been part of the process that's generated our very being, and it's certainly possible that that collective spirit of the Father reflects something metaphysically fundamental about the structure of reality itself.
Wait, I was with you up until the last sentence, yes. Well, insofar as I agree with virtually all of that, I should say that none of that should give comfort to people who want to hold on to this notion that certain of our books might have been revealed by the creator of the universe. Right?
Well, it depends on what you mean by the creator.
Yeah. I'm just saying that the world we're living in now is one in which we have whole societies shattered over this notion that some books weren't written by human beings, right? There's a different class of book, right? There's a different shelf in the library where the products of almost certainly merely human brains are venerated for all time and considered uneditable and unignorable by the majority of human beings.
Yeah, well, it's clear that revelation can devolve into fundamentalism, and that's a real problem.
So there is a risk in all this always, is an often made critique, but that when you're talking about religion, you're talking about the Inquisition, you're talking about the jihadists, you're not talking about somebody who wants to go to their local Anglican church once a year, maybe get the children into school, and maybe when they're at some desolate moment of their lives returns to this as the place that stores meaning. I mean, the thing that I think Jordan and I are in agreement on in this is that thing, with a quote from Schopenhauer in the Dialogue on Religion, when he says, that truth may be like water, it needs vessels to carry it. And when we were talking about this the other night, you admitted that one of the consequences perhaps of the parents sort of going through the belief structures they may not believe in anymore, but they keep doing it, is a demonstration of what you said was the non-embarrassing options that atheists have come up with. But it may also be that since we don't have very many vessels, that cracked and damaged and sometimes transparent as they are, what vessels you have might be worth holding on to.
Well, no, I think the challenge here is, it feels that, well, first of all, we should first notice that these comments very often take the form of, you and I don't need this stuff, but most other people do, right? And that is,
it can do that, yeah.
Yes, that's inevitably, and it sort of took that form at one moment the other night, where you acknowledge that people of low intelligence are best placed in a conservative paradigm, a traditionally conservative paradigm, because there's less to think through, right? Now, obviously, you don't want your view on religion summarized by it's good for stupid people.
Well, I do want it summarized to some degree that way, because one of the things we do.
I'm giving you the opportunity again to put this foot in your mouth.
But I would say not.
Zing. Let's see.
Not only. The thing is that we're all stupid, and some of us are far stupider than others.
But we're not. But we're not that stupid.
But there's another problem, Sam. I think, and this is obviously a contentious one. One of the things I don't go to church, but there is one thing I admire about the church, and that is that it's managed to serve as a repository for these fundamental underlying fictions for 2 millennia. And that's really something bloody unbelievable. The great, what would you say?
It is bloody unbelievable.
Well, look, Sam, everything's...
Has the church served as a repository? Has that actually happened? So let's discuss that a little bit.
Everything's soaked in blood.
What's up,
We
Andrew?
have no disagreement about that, but the secular alternatives that we produced in the 20th century were certainly no less blood-sodden, and they produced nothing of any
All right, well
productivity
then
whatsoever.
we need not do it now, but we have to put to bed that secular canard.
What
because
would you
it's, well, it's just not so that Stalinism was the product of secularism or atheism, and nor were
Well, it was a
fascism.
product. It wasn't an inevitable product or
it's
the
not-
product.
It wasn't, and please, anyone who has this meme in your head, please just allow the next sentences I speak to just push it out, because I'm so sick of hearing this. This idea that the greatest crimes of the 20th century were somehow the product of atheism, right? When you look at what actually engineered these atrocities, it was something that looked very much like a religion. It was a religion in every way apart from an explicit commitment to otherworldliness. It was based on
That's a big difference.
Dogmatism through and through.
Why is that a big difference? Let's see if Jordan qualifies that.
Was based on a personality cults that grew up around figures like Stalin and Hitler and Mao. It was not the ideas of Bertrand Russell and David Hume that brought us to the Gulag or to Auschwitz.
Yes, but then you can't say it's the thought of Jesus Christ either. I mean,
well, no, it's true. No, I can say that. I can say it was the thought of St. Augustine, and I can say it was the thought of St. Thomas Aquinas
look,
explicitly that gave us the Inquisition. This is a fact.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
I mean, this is a general one as well as one for tonight, but the whole discussion, I mean, I said the other night in Dublin that to a great extent, when the history books are written about the period we're living in, they'll probably be described as the post-Holocaust period in history, the post-World War II era in Europe. It's still going on. So we're still going through this, trying to work out what happened. And I have to say, one thing that I, at any rate, am equally tired of is the claim that this has got to be a tennis game between the religious and the non-religious. That people say that the 20th century's crimes were committed by atheists. Sometimes true, often wrong. Or that the 20th century's crimes were committed by people who were religious. Sometimes true, often wrong.
Yeah, but the thing that Sam's getting at is that you cannot actually do anything in the name of atheism as defined in the way that atheists use this term. There is no dogma, there's no attached beliefs to it. It's just a rejection of claims that gods exist. So there's there's no logical connection to take that and commit a crime. You can have atheists who happen to commit crimes, but doing it in the name of a lack of belief in a god, that's just nonsensical. There's no reason that you can logically tie to that would lead one to do that.
No, but you're not observing a crucial distinction here, because I would never be tempted to hold religion accountable for the bad things that religious people do that have no connection to religion, right? So if a Muslim robs a liquor store, I'm not going to blame Islam for that. Right? There's no doctrine.
Not then.
There's no doctrine.
Especially not then.
Yeah. There's no doctrine that makes sense of that behavior. What I blame religion for, and likewise, there's no doctrine in the mere loss of religion, i.e. atheism, that gets you the gulag.
Well,
right?
hang on. Oh, there is.
No, there's not. There's not. But let me just flesh out this point for one more second. The only thing I blame religion for are the things that it becomes rational to do by the light of these beliefs. If you accept these doctrines, a rational and good person can be tempted to join ISIS. That's my concern. Okay. A rational and good person can be tempted to support the Inquisition.
But of the many things they had in common, this is the point that David Berlinski made in his book, what did the NKVD have in common with everyone who oversaw the Gulag, the SS, people who guarded the camps, the people who put people on trains? What did they all have in common? What did they have in common with Mao? Among other things, they had in common the fact that none of them thought that God was watching them. None of them thought that they were being observed and would be held accountable.
It doesn't help when you think God is on your side. We have just as many examples where people do it because they think God is on their side, right?
Sure.
God is watching and clapping.
I'm not denying that. I'm saying that the attempt to make this a tennis match over the 20th century is a mistake. We're still trying to work out what caused it. Religion had a role, atheism had a role. But the perpetual...
Atheism had what role? I mean, Douglas isn't qualifying his claim that atheism played a role, like lack of belief in gods played a role in the Holocaust era.
Tennis match of it, I think.
Well, and there is something to be said at a more sophisticated level, I would say, for the idea that you have an obligation to a transcendent ethic. Now, you make that claim in the moral landscape. You lay out a transcendent ethic, in my estimation. That's one that puts the onus of responsibility on the individual to act in a way that, at minimum, minimizes suffering. And you think of that as a statement of fact, that that's the proper way of being, and I think about it as an axiomatic statement of faith, and that's one of our differences. But I have been very careful in my analysis of the relationship between the idea of sovereignty and the idea of religious belief. And one of the things that I have worked out, I think, partly from reading such people as Eliade and Jung, was that there is an emergent idea of sovereignty that does involve being accountable to a God. And here's how I would justify that. And I would think about this essentially from a practical and biological perspective, independent of any metaphysical reality that it might have. So the ancient Mesopotamians, for example, believed that their emperor was the incarnation or the representative of a god named Marduk. And that actually...
Andrew T. says, atheists were literally burned at the stake. What is he talking about? Naturalism and philosophy. Ted is back. Welcome back, Ted. Ted says, it's just people. That's why it transcends atheists and theists. Well, no, it doesn't. If there's a theism that has a dogma attached to it that says kill homosexuals, if there is a theism that is promoting that, and this is being bought into by people, it's not just people. There is an ideology you can point at to say, look, that's a bad idea because it's affecting those people's well-being and they shouldn't be killed. And, it's just immoral based on any goal to want to improve the general well-being of others. Farmer Bob 96. I don't think you've been on this channel, and welcome either way. Says it may be a misrepresentation of atheism, wherein a lot of trolls are really being anti-theist, but they call it atheist. I've tried pointing this out, but they are atheists. So, well, yeah, I think it's people need to be very clear. People this is an education problem, that atheism doesn't mean scientific naturalism. Atheism doesn't mean secular humanism even. There are a lot of atheists who are secular humanists, but they're not mutually exclusive. There is nothing else attached. There's no dogma, no tenets, nothing else attached to atheism besides just a lack of belief in a God. Amanda Ross Riley says, if atheism is strictly rejection of God's claims, then true, you can't do anything for the cause of atheism. But there has definitely been militant, violent, oppressive atheism and secularism too. Violent and oppressive atheism, anti-theism and secularism too. Yes, there has been ideas where, I believe threat of death, where you had to live a secular life, right, in some of these societies. So yeah, sure, point taken. But there is nothing in the quote-unquote doctrine of atheism. There is nothing. If you want to know what an atheist is, just look at a blank piece of paper. It's like, someone has proposed these claims and they don't think that there's reasonable justification to believe these claims due to lack of evidence, so you just don't believe it. You're not claiming that there are no gods, you're just claiming that you don't believe due to the lack of evidence. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you hit that like button on the stream, and let's watch a little bit more here.
Bestowed certain ethical responsibilities on the ruler, and so the ruler had to be a good Marduk in order to be a sovereign, to be regarded as sovereign. He had to be the embodiment of these divine principles, and it took the Mesopotamians a very, very long period of time, perhaps several tens of thousands of years. They weren't Mesopotamian during that whole time, obviously, to work out what those principles of sovereignty should be. And the Mesopotamians encoded this in their fictions, in their religious fictions, making essentially the proposition that the proper ruler had to have eyes all the way around his head, because that was one of the attributes of Marduk. So he was someone who was genuinely paying attention, who was capable of coming into voluntary contact with the great chaotic substructure of being and cutting it into pieces and making the habitable world, and also speaking words that were truthful, that had the power, the magic power of truth. And the ruler had to act that out if he was going to be the sort of ruler that his people weren't entitled to slay and sacrifice. And then once a year at the New Year's festival, he would go outside the city, the walled city, and he would act out his role of Marduk. And the priest would humiliate him and ask him to confess all the ways that he hadn't been a good Marduk, so that he could remember that he had a responsibility to undertake this to embody this relationship with these divine principles. And the thing that's so important about this, that's so absolutely crucially important, is that it established the principle that even if you were at the top of a hierarchy, you weren't absolute. There was something above you that you were subordinate to. And one of the extraordinarily useful ideas about the abstraction of even God as a personified spirit, let's say, is that it allows every leader to be subordinate to something that's beyond him. Now, that doesn't mean it can't be misused, but it's a...
Chris DeMarco, welcome back. Chris DeMarco says, the great chaotic substructure of being. Shoot me in the face. Mueller Mamo says, Jordan Peterson is playing Seek and Hide. Interesting.
Very, very, very important idea.
Yeah, except you can get there the other way around. You can realize that even if you're at the top of the hierarchy, you are radically dependent on everyone else. But the tip of the pyramid...
but everybody at the tip of a hierarchy doesn't believe that. Sometimes they believe that they can do whatever the hell they want.
Yeah, but I'm saying, if you're going to believe something that's compatible with rationality globally and has the least conceivable downside, I would put in that place not a superstitious attachment to a notion of an invisible friend or punisher who's above you. I would put in its place the totally defensible and palpably true fact that you could be the king of the world, and you are dependent on everyone around you to eat, to not be murdered by them. I mean, you are. I mean, it's amazing how precarious even a totalitarian regime is. I mean, the amazing thing is that these last at all, because in many cases it would just take 50 people to act in unison to kill the tyrant, right? But it never happens because you just have a first mover problem. Everyone is afraid to be the first person shot. But it is a genuine mystery that these systems even perpetuate themselves. And when they unravel, when you see Gaddafi being murdered in a crowd, you realize, wow, it really is just a matter of the restraint and fear of human beings keeping any of these things together. A benign, if you wanted a hierarchy where you had a kind of benign philosopher king pulling the reins of a society, I'm not saying we do, but even there, you could have an ethical one. You could have one where, and a non-superstitious one where someone recognized, hey, this is how we're doing it, but we are at the top of this hierarchy, am radically dependent on being surrounded by as many happy people as possible.
Well, look, I mean, I don't, in some profound sense, I don't disagree with
we're
that.
Actually, I mean, this sounds like a fiction, but we're living with this problem, and we encounter this more and more when you talk, in Silicon Valley, as you and I occasionally do, and I'm sure you do as well, where you meet people who are fantastically wealthy, who seem uncannily detached at the detached at the fact that there's this growing chasm between them and those they know and the rest of humanity, and you begins to wonder what level of wealth inequality will everyone find alarming. And some people are acting as though there is no level that is alarming, that there's the kind of a law of nature that this thing can grow just impossibly to the point where we have trillionaires walking around and in driving in their motorcades, and it's kind of it's sort of the libertarian religion one occasionally runs into, and clearly there's some level of inequality that's untenable, or at least would be undesirable. I mean,
well, it's a funny thing, because that's a place where our thought loops and then agrees to some degree again, because I do believe that you can, in some sense, rationally derive an ethic. So let's take the argument that you put forward and say that, well, and this is an extension of your well-being argument to some degree, which I've thought about a fair bit. It's like, well, okay, what's the optimal solution for you? Well, first of all, there isn't just you now. There's you now, and you tomorrow, and you next week, and you in a year, you in 5 years. So there's you and the you that propagates across time. So one of the implications of that is that you can't do anything that's really good for the you now that isn't very good for you a week from now, right?
Yeah.
So that means you have to imagine yourself as multiple individuals across multiple time frames. And then you have to figure out what's good for all those individuals across all those time frames, although you discount the future to some degree because of its unpredictability. But then, so that's a very tight set of constraints. And you might say, well, a rational person would calculate what was optimal across all those multiple time frames. Then you do the same thing with other people, which is the point you just made. Well, it isn't just you, because who's you? There's you and your family. And most people are in a situation where they would regard damage to their family as perhaps even worse than damage to them. So whatever they are obviously encapsulates their family, and then to some degree that flows off into the community. And so there is no isolated you, and that's sort of your point with regards to the ethic. But then, so I agree with all that, but then one of the things that I would suggest is that, because that's an incredibly difficult rational calculation, and perhaps an impossible one, technically speaking, but certainly very difficult, that what has happened in part as our great narratives have emerged across time is that we have observed ourselves attempting to solve that multiple identity, multiple time frame problem, and we've told stories about people who do that exceptionally well, and then we've winnowed out those stories, and we've produced these powerful narratives that encapsulate the ethic that does in fact reflect that wisdom. And and I think you actually accept some of that in your moral propositions, which is something that we've talked about before. So for example, although never really agreed on, you certainly believe, for example, that the embodiment of truth is one of the means whereby you solve the problem of ethics. And I would say that that's a deeply rooted Judeo-Christian concept, that
it's
the truth
so
above
deeply
all,
rooted that it precedes any notion of religious provincialism. I mean, it's deeper than Judeo-Christian. It's deeper than our humanity on some level. At one point, we talked about the golden rule, and I said that the precursor to the golden rule can be found even among monkeys, right? The golden rule is a good rule even for monkeys.
Yes, exactly. And so,
but let me just add to the picture you sketched out. I completely agree with. We have an ethical obligation even to our future selves, right? I mean, we are in relationship to who's going to be the person who's drinking his fourth scotch tonight has some ethical relationship to the person who's going to wake up with a hangover tomorrow morning. And one thing we know for sure, and which we have begun to dimly understand and describe scientifically, is that we are bad at all of these calculations, right? Like the hyperbolic discounting of future rewards,
Well, that's also why I think we have these stringent limitations on rationality, Sam, is that we can't solve the problem through calculation.
Well, no, but we increasingly can, and even where it's best summarized not by one thing I'll grant you is that it's not always best conveyed or rendered indelible and actionable by being given a nature paper or an abstract from a paper in the literature and being told this is the way you want to behave to maximize your well-being. It may best be conveyed by certain stories, right, or certain books that are in the philosophy section of the bookstore, not the science section. And you and I were at the book signing the other night, and someone came up with a copy of the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, right? A fantastic book. I mean, there's so much wisdom in that book, right? And there's nothing about stoning a girl to death if she's not a virgin on her wedding day. Now, we all recognize that Marcus Aurelius was a human being who wrote this book, and that provenance is no barrier to taking the book deadly seriously. It's an incredibly useful book, and Stoicism could be the quote religion or the guiding philosophy of the West. It would be a much better one than Judaism or Christianity, and have virtually none of the downside. And so that's my point, that we're in this perverse circumstance of being held hostage by certain products of literature. And we need to break the spell. And if we're finding it this hard to break, what do we think is going to happen in the Middle East or in sub-Saharan Africa? I mean, the moral progress we need to engineer is a common humanity coming together across shared values.
Those are perfectly credible arguments, but
So yeah, this is conversation's a lot more poignant this time around, number 4. I find myself wanting to keep following this conversation because there seems to be some lineage to it, not stopping as much. Let's see what we got going here in the chat. Ferris Kuzum, thanks for commenting, says you can't put atheism and theism on equal ground as ideologies. That leads people into different actions. Yeah, because atheism isn't an ideology. It isn't really an ism. It's a non-ism. It's just a lack of belief in propositions that gods exist. The very concept of atheism is existentially correlated with theism. Yes, that's true. It's just a response to I don't believe you when they make the theistic claim of gods existing. Abolish it, we won't have atheism. True. Atheism is just the a lot of people get this definition wrong, and they'll be like, "Well, I believe in God on faith, and you have faith that there's no God." It's like, no, that's not the way atheism works. It's not adopting a burden of proof. It's the same thing as like if I claim that there are invisible fairies flying around my head right now, and I can see them, but you can't, you shouldn't believe me. You shouldn't believe my claim. And you don't have to prove that there are no fairies that are flying around. You just are an atheist to that claim. You're an afairyist to that claim. Ted says, what would Alan Watts make of all this? Chris DeMarco says, first, Watts always said he's not a guru and you shouldn't follow him, but use his teachings like using a raft to cross a river. You disregard the raft after... let's see. Ted says, why do you feel the need to tell me that? After M philosophy, he would use probably... Chris DeMarco says he would also probably use that Peterson is doing the opposite. Peterson even said in his first book, Dad, I think I figured something out that no one else has before. Chris DeMarco continues to say he's just so full of himself and his deep thinking. Let's see. Mueller says Sam is very smart. Yes, he is. Ted says I listen to him sometimes. Okay, you guys are still talking about that. Amanda Ross Riley says, yeah, I was going to say, how does Peterson think he can prove those people are exceptionally good at long-term reasoning? It's just because people said so, basically. Yeah, I mean, if you can build a scientific model, Amanda, to kind of demonstrate whether that claim is true or not. But yeah, and obviously you shouldn't just go off if someone says so. That wouldn't be good evidence at all. So yeah, yeah, you have, if someone's going to claim that those people are exceptionally good, then you have to demonstrate that claim, just like any other claim. What you reading? Welcome back. Says, I always come back to these debates. Love them. Yes, they are very, very exciting, entertaining. Farmer Bob 96 says, some people treat scientific literature as holy. I mean, holiness in having some kind of spiritual connection in the same way that you have a spiritual connection to your favorite song. You might have a spiritual connection to your favorite scientific theory, or a moment in scientific history, if that's what you mean by holy. But I mean, scientific literature is essentially the placeholder for the models that are based on the evidence of reality, and the literature describes those models. And of course the models can be adapted and changed as new evidence comes available, and that's the way science works. So people, I guess you could treat the literature as holy, but understand that this is an ever-changing working system. That's what science is. It's always changing, and we're always finding new evidence and proving new theories, creating new hypotheses based on evidence that we've discovered. It hid this one for some reason. Let's see. Arlius argues that we should treat each other, Aurelius, argues that we should treat each other as though we will encounter assholes. I've worked retail, can confirm. Oh, nothing worse than retail. For those of you who are just tuning in, thank you. Make sure you like this stream. It helps the channel. It helps everything out. Farmer Bob 96 says, comic books were my early holy books. I am Batman. Okay, we've solved it. Farmer Bob 96 is Batman. Ted says, I agree with Harris on almost everything, as do I. Ideologically, me and Sam Harris are very, very aligned. Okay, where are we at? 47. Okay, let's watch some more. Thank you guys again in the chat. Again, like this stream, like it. It just takes a second. Hit that like button. Hit it. You know you wanna hit it. Yes, and in about 10 minutes, I will. Actually, why don't you guys let me know right now? Anyone who's in the chat, let me know if you would be able to make it to New York City for the Matt Dillahunty, Dinesh D'Souza conversation, because I am giving away 4 tickets tonight, 2 pairs of tickets. So let me know in the chat if you would be able to make those dates, and then you'll be considered to potentially be one of the winners. Just checking some notifications. Okay. Right. We are good to go.
Weakness in the argument, I think, is the one that we started to talk about earlier, which is that when you talked with Dave Rubin a while back, and Michael Shermer said the same thing recently, he basically said that atheism is a doctrine of negation. That's what you said with Rubin, is that there isn't a positive ethos in atheism. all it says is that there's nothing personified. There's nothing personified transcendent. It's something like that. There is no God, and so the problem with the atheistic
it's not even the assertion that there is no God. It's just that it's a failure to be convinced by any of the gods on offer. It's just like not believing in Zeus.
Fine, and it's not like it's a weak. It's not like it's a weak argument. I mean, I'm perfectly aware that making a deistic case or a case for religion in the face of the claims of the rationalist atheists is perhaps, well, it's a very, very difficult thing to manage. But it is also the case that, and this is where I think we differ with regards to what happened, say, in the Soviet Union and perhaps to also in Nazi Germany, is that when your doctrine demolishes the let's call it the literary or fictional substructure and leaves nothing behind, an ethos needs to be provided, because something will rush in to fill the void. And it's certainly the case, and this is what Nietzsche warned about, even though he was a strident anti-Christian, and it's also what Dostoevsky foresaw. He said, if we knock out the logos from the substructure of Western society, Nietzsche believed that it was Christianity's emphasis on truth that destroyed Christianity, which was an extremely interesting criticism, that Christianity had elevated to truth to such a degree that it actually resulted in the demolition of its own dogmatic substructure. But be that as it may, Nietzsche's prognostication was that if we allowed God to die, and perhaps there were reasons for that, that the consequence would be that we would be awash in both nihilism and totalitarian bloodshed, and that is what happened in the 20th century. And
there's another aspect to that, which is that you may try to knock out the whole thing and take out some of the substructure, but not the whole thing. That's what Nietzsche also shows, that his prediction, and I think it's blindingly obviously true, that you might in this post-Christian era have a remnant of Christianity such as guilt, overbearing guilt, and no means of alleviation or redemption.
Right, which is actually part of the problem of Protestantism, by the way, right. Because it's, and there are other things too that seem to be fundamental religious issues that secularists, I think, have a difficult time accounting for. It's like, so you actually have to grapple seriously with the problem that a doctrine that's essentially one of negation doesn't offer a positive ethos. And you are doing that, to be perfectly fair. You said that reading a Nature paper about the necessity of calculating your ethic across multiple timeframes and multiple persons doesn't have the motive force that's going to drive you to act ethically in life. And I do believe that's true. But I think the fact that the rationalist ethos doesn't have motivational push is actually a fatal flaw.
They don't meet every week to read Marcus Aurelius. That's a big problem.
And they don't write music. There's no music that goes along with it. There's no art that goes along with it. There's no architecture that goes along with it. I don't know why exactly.
But to be fair to the present, most music and most art and most architecture is no longer religious. That it has flown the perch provided by religion traditionally. And most of what we care about in increasingly cosmopolitan and secular societies is not tied to religion in any direct way. And there are even whole religions like Judaism where you have to look long and hard to find anyone who believes much of anything that is religious. I have literally sat on stage debating what I thought was a religious rabbi who was a conservative rabbi, and when I said something that assumed that he believed in a God who could hear prayers, he threw up his hands and he said, "What makes you think I believe in a God who can hear prayers?" And I was just, I practically lost the debate just in my astonishment. It's like, what does it mean to be a conservative rabbi in this case? There are religions that have made that transition to an increasingly attenuated commitment to the truth of the doctrine, and there are religions who haven't moved an inch, right? And but I think we have to acknowledge that this movement in this direction is progress, because what it actually is at bottom is increasing sensitivity to the difference between having good reasons and bad reasons for what you believe, right? And the fact that this book has been around forever is not a good reason. The fact that mommy told me so.
It's not a terrible reason though, because the fact that something has lasted for that length of time at least makes the fact that it's lasted a mystery. And you can't just attribute that to casual politicking or economic circumstances. There's something. Look, the least that you can say about many of the biblical stories is that they're incredibly memorable. And that means that in some sense they're adapted to the memory structures of...
But we have to look at why they are memorable. Are they memorable because they're works like Shakespeare? They just stand on their own merit and they don't have belief systems and gods behind them? Or are they memorable because people have told, and sometimes by threatening death, that you have to believe in this God or else you are an enemy of this God? So are these stories actually making it through history on their merit, or are they being spread like the Crusades? All right. Well, I think we're at a good time to... Okay, so the winner of the first pair of tickets is Amanda Rose Riley. She is new to the stream. Amanda Rose Riley, you are new to the stream. You win a pair of tickets. You're coming to see Dinesh D'Souza take on Matt Dillahunty. And I know we're going to sell 1,000 tickets, so we will have that event available in some kind of live stream form. So the first pair of tickets are going to Amanda Rose Riley. Amanda Rose Riley wins 2 tickets. Woohoo! Congrats to Amanda. And the winner of the second pair for tonight is returning chatster Nick Phelan. Nick Phelan, you've won the second. Nick Phelan wins the second pair of tickets. Congratulations to you both. Thank you for being here to engage in the chat. And congrats. Andrew T, welcome back. Andrew T says, I love you, Travis. I love you too, dude. Let's take a quick break. It's been an hour. Hopefully, you guys will hang around for the second part here. I think we'll probably go like hour and a half, maybe hour 45 today. Actually feeling like I have energy. To collect your tickets for winners, Amanda and Nick, to collect your tickets, go over to the Pangburn Facebook page and send us a private message telling us that you were the winner of the 2 tickets, and we will set all that up for you guys. So come over to Facebook at Pangburn Inspire. It's right below my big ugly beard, at Pangburn Inspire on Facebook. Come over there and send us a message, and we will set you up. What's going on Twitter? I was away from Twitter for a little bit, and I had 100 notifications, and I was like, is someone going after me? Not that it matters. It's exciting. Okay, let's take a quick break, and I'll come right back, and we'll continue on. Thanks, guys. All right, I am back. You guys may or may not have seen, but I brought back a rum and eggnog with me because it's getting close to the holidays and it's time. A little bit of white rum with a little bit of eggnog. I usually go with dark spice, but white's what I got. What do we got going in the chat here? Amanda Rose Riley says, "Oh, awesome, thank you. Yes, make sure you come and say hello. I'll be around at the event. Same with you, Nick. Congrats." What You Reading says the stories are inspirational with reference to the Bible, I believe. I would say maybe some of them could be. What do you think are the most inspirational parts of the Bible? What You Reading? Amanda Rose says, good thing I'm on a weird sleep schedule. You and me both, sister. Andrew T says, D'Souza's going to get smacked. Well, you all know where I sit on the God topic. I don't think there's a reasonable justification to believe in the existence of any gods. Obviously, with Jordan Peterson here, he is talking about gods in the sense of, when he's talking about God's existence, talking about a metaphorical God, not an actual God. And then obviously people take him to contest on that because people like Sam will say, well, a lot of people are looking at their fundamental belief in God and saying, oh, well, Jordan believes in it, so I should feel justified and I can use his arguments. And Sam will say, well, and you're not being clear enough to these people. Krista Marco says, honestly, is it worth listening to a person who can't imagine a scenario where he could be wrong in his positions? D'Souza is that person, like the other Trump sycophants. He is driven by ideology. Just my 2 cents. I've listened to too much of D'Souza to take him seriously. What do you think of how D'Souza is handling social extremism? Do you think D'Souza is a good grounding rod to combat these extremely loud Antifa, anti-free speech people? Because in my research of what Dinesh has been doing a lot of recently, I think he's doing good work in that regards. Now, I don't agree with, I mean, there's very few people I agree with them fully ideologically on everything. I mean, there are some people where I've spent a lot of time with Sam Harris, and I'm not sure that we ever disagreed on anything that we talked about, any ideas. I think me and Matt have a few disagreements on free will, but I mean, me and Matt tend to both just base our worldviews on our skeptical inquiry into the claims that are being made. But yeah, Chris, I'd be interested to hear what you think about that. Farmer Bob 96 says, has Sam Harris discussed these issues with a Buddhist? I'm not hugely knowledge on Buddhism, but I've been told it's not a religion per se, more psychology and philosophy. I mean, Sam has spent a lot of time studying Buddhism. I'm sure he's talked to Buddhists. I would do a quick YouTube search for that one. But yeah, I mean, he speaks about Buddhism lots. What You're Reading says, D'Souza is cool, not familiar with the other person. Yeah, Matt Dillahunty, just YouTube him and you'll get a good taste. Actually, watch the debate between Matt Dillahunty and Jordan Peterson. That's actually the next event that we will do for the watch parties, since we're moving up to our next event with Matt Dillahunty. Amanda Rose Riley says, this might be bad, but You know how a lot of theists claim atheists are secretly believers? I think a lot of theists are secretly atheists because they follow religious rules selectively. I completely agree with that. I think there are a lot of, and I think it was Dave Silverman. I'm not sure if he talks about this a lot. Former president of American Atheists. I think he talks about this lots, or I know he used to talk about this lots. That he believes that churches are filled with atheists, and I think it's reasonable to say if you're seeing someone who claims to be, a Christian, and there's not a thing about the way they live that is Christian about them, then I think it's reasonable to say, well, you're not following any of the dogma, the tenets of this religion, so how can you call yourself this? Whereas what I would say to this is like, what are the reasons why we should be following these tenets? Are they good tenets? Are we just following them because they're tradition and because we believe that there's some kind of God behind it, or what's our reasoning here? Ted says Sam did have a Buddhist on his podcast once that I know of. Thanks for that, Ted. Amanda says maybe it's just me, but if I believed in eternal hell at all, I would be doing everything I possibly could to avoid it. Yeah, and that's and you see that in a lot of really committed people who are really dialed in and committed to these belief systems, that there is a severe amount of anxiety, hell anxiety apparent in them, because they believe this to actually be the case. It's like, this isn't just part of the story that we all buy into so that we can compare clothing on Sundays. It's and I stole that from George Carlin. George Carlin says something where people get together to compare clothing, something like that. It's one of his stand-ups about religion. You would, if you actually did believe in hell, you would be damn sure not to be fucking up all the time, from whatever doctrine standpoint that you happen to be following. This is really good, by the way. Oh yeah, taste that rum. Cheers, Zents29, welcome back. Cheers. Remember to hit that like button, guys. It's great to see so many of you coming back to these. I enjoy doing them. They're fun for me. They're relaxing. Farmer Bob says some of the online atheist trolls are scarily fanatical and truly ignorant of what atheism is. Yes, 100%. 100%. People are wanting to create their own new label of what atheism is and put it out there, when it's like, we don't need to be fucking with labels all the time. But that's also important why when there is a term that is very muddy, it's good to clarify it when you're talking about what you mean by atheism. Let's see what else we got here. What You're Reading says, David and Goliath, it's about beating impossible odds. Oh, okay, yeah, the David and Goliath story. Yeah, I mean, but I mean, there are many versions of the David and Goliath story overcoming seemingly impossible odds that predate the Bible, right? So you can't really attribute that idea to the Bible, but the story itself, sure, you can say that this was told better for these reasons, or this was told to me because it happened to be the popular thing when my parents were growing up, and my parents became convinced, or they were raised in the religion, and then they taught it to me, right? Amanda says, I don't deny that, but what does that have to do with the potential for fake believers or disbelievers? Zens29 says, yes, Dinesh is doing good work speaking against the woke crowd, but can't argue religion for shit. Well, I mean, I think religion is an indefensible, religious belief in an actual creator. Dinesh will admit that it is faith. But then Dinesh will go on to say, well, but you have faith in all you have to do is listen to the podcast between me and Dinesh. It's on this channel. And he'll say like, well, you have faith in the woman you choose to marry. And it's like, no, I have a certain level of trust based on my experience and this scientific model I have built in my mind about the things that make this woman the woman I would like to try marrying. And it's not saying that, oh, I know this is going to work out, but it's not faith. Faith is much different. Faith is believing something when there is lack of good reason. That's why the word is created. Because someone says, well, why do you believe that? If someone says to you, why do you believe that apples grow on trees? You can say, I believe they grow on trees because of this. Here's this evidence. Here's this evidence. I can give you a sample. I can give you a video of it actually growing. We can actually do a study on the tree to actually prove, yes, apples do grow on trees. But if you ask someone, why do you believe in the existence of this God? And the arguments boil down, and then essentially the claim is made, well, I guess it's just my faith. That's when you failed to find good reason for your belief, and you put in the term faith when there is no good reason to sit where reason normally would sit. Christopher Edmond says Matt crushed against Peterson. Yeah, he really did. Man, I was there for that event. I got in the cab with Jordan, and after, I think Matt went with one of his friends. So me and Jordan were in the cab, in the limo, just the two of us together after. And that's the most defeated I've ever seen Jordan look, definitely, after that event. And he was tired. And I remember him saying he was like, I wish I wouldn't have done a podcast with you earlier before that event, because he said the podcast kind of tired him out a bit. But I think Matt, I think Matt got to really got to the basics of what is wrong with Jordan's propositions when it comes to the belief in a God, even when we're talking about a metaphorical God. Farmer Bob says, well, I find a lot of confusion on both sides. Example, many Christians don't read the Bible. Many atheists make up a lot of rules about atheism. Yeah, there shouldn't be any rules about atheism. If anyone's making those up, they should stop doing it. Yes, so most Christians I've come across or have had conversations with don't know a thing about the Bible. And then the ones that do, you have to admit that there is very barbaric crap in the Bible, and you have to somehow reconcile that with your belief system. And a lot of people do it by, these were barbaric times when these texts were written, and some of this would have just been men acting immorally and putting this stuff in the book. Or some will make the argument as to, there's deeper meaning to what's happening here. In these things, you can't just read it on the surface. And Exodus 21, where it actually just tells you it's sanctioned slavery. You can hold slaves. These are the rules about holding slaves. You can own another person as property. And as far as I'm concerned, never is that moral. Owning someone else as property, another human being. But this is sanctioned in the Bible, Exodus 21, and if you're going to buy into this doctrine, you need to deal with these things, and you need to, because here's the thing: you're likely going to have children, and your children are going to ask you questions. You want your children to be cognitively astute and skeptical, right? So you have to deal with these things. You need to form reasons. You need to apply reason and skepticism to your own belief systems. This is what I wish for people to do. Ted says, I'm so buying eggnog tomorrow. Oh, this is so good. Oh. Farmer Bob. So I wonder how many problems are caused in the name of something rather than what that something is. Yeah, that's a good question. It's like, I think a lot of the time when someone has the psychological intuition or the psychological drive to do harm, I think that those opportunities to do harm can be unlocked by kind of fragments of what they need to justify these kind of actions. So I think sometimes these things are like bad things, problems that happen are caused by people looking at an idea and extrapolating from that some way to mean that they're allowed to do X, kill their family, then kill themselves or whatever. What you're reading says, religion is just like that drink you just had. Some people use it to cope. They enjoy it. It's problematic when they go too far. Yeah, but it's also, we don't want people believing things to be true in reality that aren't based in evidence, right? We get huge benefit to relying on the scientific method to unveil what is actually going on in reality. The germ theory of disease, the making a car go, creating vaccinations, creating renewable energy sources. Like all this stuff comes from the scientific method. And the scientific method is based on not making appeals to emotion as to what we believe, but we form our beliefs in science to the evidence of reality and the scientific models we build from that evidence. And this just benefits humanity. So in general, human beings should be moving towards believing truths, scientific truths that may actually very well change as new evidence comes along, but they are the best answers that we have for the time being based on the evidence available. That's the scientific method, and we should all be moving towards that. Ted says, if you don't believe in anything supernatural, you're probably a naturalist. Go to naturalism.org to learn more. If you don't believe in anything supernatural, no one should. The supernatural hasn't been demonstrated to exist. Let's see. Zen's29 says, yeah, the old everyone has faith like me bullshit. Yeah, it is bullshit. This is a weak argument you go to when someone points out that faith isn't a good reason for believing anything, really. I'm actually building models around the things that I believe around me, and I'm not applying absolute certainty that those things are going to work out, but I have good reasons to believe those propositions and those things. Amanda says, fair enough. Ted says, the apple tree apples. Show. Oh, I think I'm back. I think I was disconnected there for a second. Sorry, guys. Pascal's wager. So basically, what if you're wrong? It's better to just believe in some religion, in some God, just in case you might be wrong. It's basically doing it for the reason of basically betting, just in case this might be true. You throw your lot in with whatever. The problem with Pascal's wager is that, first of all, it's not putting your worldview should not be focused on Pascal's wager or any idea like that. It should be just focused on applying skepticism to every proposition, and for the reasons of what science gives us, gives humanity. It gives us all the good things that help us to survive longer and live better lives and live more fruitful lives. So I don't buy into the Pascal wager, and another reason is that if you buy into, say, okay, I'm going to be a Muslim and a Christian, that should cover me. Well, what if Hinduism's correct? What if Buddhism's correct? What if some other religion that comes out that looks like a cult? What if Scientology's correct? And you haven't bought into those. So you're not applying Pascal's wager across the whole board there. There's and these a lot of these religious doctrines are not compatible with one another. You have to pick one because if you're reading the text honestly, you have to pick one. It's like, there shall be no other God before me. This is the God you must worship. It's like, okay, well, take your pick. Well, Pascal's wager fails because you should be wagering on everything. Because if you're not evaluating these claims on evidence and you're just applying Pascal's wager to them, then you have nothing to go on. You just have to apply it across the board. Zens29 says, I'll definitely have to check your Dinesh vid. Yeah, check it out. It was a fun conversation, and we'll probably do another one before this event for sure. Christopher Edmond says, I am a former Mormon, served a 2-year mission in Chile back when I believed. Wow. Interesting. Oh, important note, you guys. For those of you who weren't here at the start of this stream, you will see this new logo, the War of Ideas. It's right up here. The War of Ideas. This is the new logo for a new online publication that I am starting. So if you're interested in being a contributor, writing for this online publication, I want people who aren't typically writing provocative things or putting their ideas out there. I want those kind of people to be submitting and writing for this. So if you want to write for this publication and try to get one of your pieces online, send us an email to info@pang-burn.com and basically send us a quick pitch of what you were thinking of writing, and then we'll respond with whether we think it's worthwhile to pursue, and then basically we'll go through the whole editorial process with you, and we'll work with you to help you to try and get this published. Amanda says, I don't think it's necessarily just not knowing the Bible. Some Christians will vehemently enforce anti-gay rules, but turn a blind eye to sex outside marriage, which the Bible is also clearly against. Yes, there's a lot of hypocrisy when it comes to religious doctrines, because so many of those beliefs and tenets just aren't legal anymore. It's not legal in Canada, say, to kill homosexuals. If a man layeth with another man as he layeth with a woman, he shall be stoned to death or put to death. Killing people who are shopping or working on the Sabbath. Like, these things, you can't kill people for that anymore. So obviously they're going to have to be hypocrites to some degree to their religious doctrines, but so probably everyone you know, Amanda, is doing that to some degree. But yeah, I mean, people are going to keep doubling down, I think, until the point where they're like, oh, well, I can't really act on any of this because it's legal for, gay people to live healthy, free lives just like anyone else. So now I can't really do anything but say that I'm against it. But even at that, when I say that, I can't find any friends because it boxes me into this terrible box over here that they're a hater of homosexuals or they don't approve of homosexuality. So then you get boxed into this thing, and no one wants to be the person that's boxed into this thing socially. It's just not a place you want to be. You don't want to be treated like a Nazi. So you'll do what you can to avoid speaking about the things that you can't live with. Scott. I thought I saw something from Scott. Scott Lovenberg says, Sigh, most of the stuff you're telling about is Old Testament. You understand literally you're talking about the book of the Bible that Christians don't follow. They follow the New Testament. Jesus endorsed all of the laws in the Old Testament. Not a bit of the old law shall be changed. Jesus came to fulfill the law of the prophets. So this whole idea of you can claim that you're just believing the New Testament, but you can't discount all that other stuff. Are you going to discount the creation myth? If you're a Christian, the creation myth comes from the Old Testament. So many things. Like, think of all the Old Testament things, the Ten Commandments, all the things. Are you going to discount all of that? Do you not believe in any of that? Or do you not think it has any relevance to Christianity? Zen's 29 says, Mormons are generally so fucking nice. The beliefs, though, the last one is a fart in the wind. Ah, gotcha. Amanda Rose Riley. Not sure we will ever have a world where everyone's a skeptic. I know so many people who would rather have comforting beliefs than true, and they won't change. I think everyone can change. I think when you start understanding that skepticism leads to things like this, a child who has a solid foundation in skepticism will not be able to, you will not be able to victimize a child who has a solid foundation in skepticism. Imagine if we eradicated all child victims of abuse around the world just by adopting the idea that children should be given a solid foundation in skepticism and shown how to use this tool. Once you actually give examples of this working and showing people that we can even start engaging this as early as 3 years old, it's the examples that the good that this will do will not be able to be ignored. And I really think that is the humanity of the future. Zen's 29 says, "Oh hell no, we'll never have that world for a million reasons." Amanda. Ted says, "It's my bedtime. Good night, Ted." Zen's 29 says, "Pascal assumes that only one God can possibly exist." Yeah, if Pascal's going to make that claim, it's like, well, the burden of proof's on you, man. Farmer Boy 96 says, why can't religions update their books? Why can't religions update their knowledge? Has anyone scientifically tested results on things like prayer? Yeah, prayer's been tested and has failed. There's no evidence that prayer does anything outside of placebo. Chris DeMarco says, Pangburn, far-right extremism was responsible for 50 shootings in 2018. Antifa is anti-fascist and anti-racist. Those are good things to be against. What's wrong with being woke exactly? Chris DeMarco, far-right extremism was responsible for 50 shootings in 2018. First of all, to claim that it was far-right extremism that was the cause of the shootings, that burden of proof is on you to prove, Chris. It's true that you may find in these manifestos that these psychopaths, which most of them are later on, the ones that do survive are basically given that diagnosis. These psychopaths may claim that these are the reasons in their manifestos that they did these atrocities, but that does not mean that is why they did these atrocities. Just because a psychopath claims something like this, it does not mean that's why they did it. Now, and in a lot of cases, they would have found some other mode of hate to drive these terrible acts. I have a podcast on what is wrong with Antifa and why I declared ideological war on Antifa, and it is on this channel. I won't go through the whole thing right now, but Antifa has some major fucking problems. You don't assault people you disagree with. Full stop. If you think someone is a Nazi in a crowd, that is not an excuse to assault them. That's what a coward does. What that is an opportunity to engage in discourse with that person and show your disagreement. and try to show them, even if you're convinced that you are not going to be able to convince them that they are wrong in their ideology, but there could be others around them listening or being recorded or whatever that are thinking along these same lines, and you could give rational arguments that might not convince the person you're talking to, but could convince the other people who are listening. So intellectual discourse, the attempt to have these conversations and discussions. And if they choose not to have those conversations and discussions, there will be another day to have a battle, a battle of ideas. But this idea of beating an idea out of someone, no evidence that this works. No evidence. You cannot beat an idea out of someone. You cannot silence an idea with force. Now, it's true that when an idea gets out of control and people start killing people based on this idea, like in the Holocaust, there is a time for violence and a justified violence to protect people from people who are doing harm and burning bodies and gassing people by the millions. But this is not what Antifa is doing. Antifa is showing up at these rallies, calling people Nazis and fascists. I've been labeled a Nazi and fascist because I will not put up with violence towards people that have ideas that you disagree with or that you detest. Completely unacceptable. But I have a full podcast on that if anyone's interested in listening to that on this channel. Zens29 says, yes, praying is comparable to chants. Yes, it is, except the prayer to those who have major religious convictions can create placebo effects that are quite strong, that chants doesn't create. MBL McKenzie, welcome back. Sup. Remember to sub too, guys. Need more subscribers on this channel. Remember to sub, share this channel with your friends. Really appreciate it. And of course, hit that like button on this stream. I am having a rum and eggnog for those of you who are just showing up. Zens29 says, yes, Chris, there are good things to be against unless you are what you claim to hate. And you are what? Scott Lovenberg says, I should say about Pascal's wager, my point is that it doesn't fail. You break even at worst mathematically. I get it's more complicated than that, but I do feel it gets waived despite the math. Pascal's wager, my point is that it doesn't fail. Well, it does fail. It creates this idea that it's okay to believe a claim without evidence, without applying skepticism to it. You're just believing it for bad that's going to happen, or believe that that's a good thing, a good belief to hold on to, because I'm going to break even at worse. Okay, let's go to. Let's go to the next part here. Sorry, 1 second. Yes, that's true. Chris DeMarco points out that sometimes the praying can have worse effect on a patient, but that's what I mean by placebo. Kofi A. Premph. Hashtag ADOS. Sam Harris and the East Indian guy are anti-African racist. East Indian guy. Also that Coleman Cruz Hughes. What? I don't know what you're talking about. Zens29 says Sam hates the blacks. And he says LOL. Zens29 says shh, Kofi, just shh. Yeah, that's a bold claim there, Kofi. You're going to have to demonstrate that with evidence. Isaiah says, here's my pitch. Topic on beauty whether it is objective or subjective, worth pursuing. I think that's a good topic. I want to take a Kantian view with a supplement of Harris's objectivity, although I still haven't fully thought it out yet. That would be very interesting. You should email us about that, Isaiah. I would be very interested to hear your short pitch on that, and then if it's cool, I would work as the help you as kind of the editor. I think that would be very cool. Zens29 says you don't have to be far left to be against the far right. That is very true. Beauty, objective or subjective? Robin Kears says psychopath is not a diagnosis, Einstein. Someone being diagnosed as psychopathic is part of the diagnosis. Yes, it is. Keith Connolly says Antifa got tempted by the dark side. They need to put down the red lightsaber. Yes, they do. They need to put down the weapons and engage in ideological warfare, the war of ideas. Scott Levenbrick says, also, if you call someone a Nazi and you're wrong, and then you assault them on top of it, yeah. Yeah, it's just the amount of Nazis that exist on this planet are, please someone create a list. And this has to be not just you feel that they're a Nazi. They have to be practicing Nazism. Zens29 says, it's true that people in general find facial symmetry among other objective features attractive, but to say beauty is objective is a stretch, in my opinion. Chris DeMarco, Pangburn, I have many thoughts in response to what you have said regarding Antifa. Thank you for sharing and would love to discuss in the Facebook group sometime. Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. MBL McKenzie says, Christianity is a huge mess. I was reading History of Philosophy. Since the very beginning of the church problems about the Trinity, the Jews had an impact in the original message. Sense29 says, I take that back. Beauty can only be objective if it's not a thought. Not everyone finds one single person attractive, so I'd say no. Joseph CH says, we don't even know what reality is. We have developed ways in which people believe they do. Oh no. What do we got here? But if you talk about science, you're talking about a man-made illusion that is based on a system of Oh, don't become a meme, Joseph. Imagine talking about dimensional existence or the quantum realm shows us that we really have no clue, and our math and science fail us at these extreme end of the spectrum. Oh, Joseph. The scientific method, we build models based on the evidence of reality. These are repeatable models. These are just models that we build based on the evidence of reality. There is no illusion here. You don't understand the scientific method. And you don't understand, let's read through this again. It's extraordinary. Joseph C.H. says, we don't even know what reality is. Demonstrate that claim. You're making a positive claim. Why don't you think we have a model of what reality is when the consensus in the scientific community is nearly 100% that we do have a working model of what reality is? Do you have some new information that would win you a Nobel Prize? You say we have developed ways in which people believe they do, but if you talk about science, you're talking about a man-made illusion. It's not an illusion. The process, the models we build are repeatable, and that's why we can build things like do things like combustion and fly rockets and create vaccines, like all the great things that keep us working, create useful machines. So you're just wrong. Zens29 says, our math and science only fail us when talking about things we don't yet understand. Yeah, true. And that's usually a failure of the equation. Or, somewhat. I'll also buy some perhaps fundamental misunderstanding. But in most cases, we are onto it. We're on the task. There's obviously some things we perhaps have started with an incorrect model, and it's not even a model, it's just a hypothesis like consciousness, which I think is flawed. And this is part of what I'm discovering with my new book. Joseph C.H. goes on to say the number 1 or any number is as real as God in the Old Testament. No, the number 1 is part of language and how we describe one set of something. It's not just made up like the God in the Bible. It has application. The label doesn't have intrinsic meaning. It just has usages. You're trying to say that if something doesn't have intrinsic meaning, it's just like making something up based on faith. No, it's not, Joseph. Couldn't be more wrong. The New Testament is, and then you say the New Testament is nothing more than a fabrication for people to empower to keep it. Let's see this claim. You're making a lot of claims, Joseph. What you're doing right now is called claim vomiting. So slow down the claims and demonstrate your claims that you're making. The number 1, there, let's see, you say the New Testament is nothing more than a fabrication for people in power to keep it. So you have to demonstrate that claim as well, because there's other reasons why the New Testament exists, right? You can imagine some. Isaiah says demon hypothesis, radical skepticism, modern translation to the matrix hypothesis. Very interesting. Another good idea there, Isaiah. Sense 29, we understand many things. Yes. Joseph C.H. says, can anyone tell me where to find the number 2 in real life without writing it down or fabricating it? Again, this is a label. 2 is part of language, and it's a language label that we put because we're trying to label something so that we understand how to reference that thing to each other. It's part of communication. It's part of how languages are built. It has a purpose. It doesn't have intrinsic meaning. It has a usage. And 2, the label 2, has a usage. Zen's 29 says, look at a rock, then look at another rock. Real life. Zen says there's 2. 2 is a label to describe a concept. Yeah, you're getting it, Zen. Scott Lovenberg says 0 is harder to represent, especially if you're dividing it among something or worse, nothing. Yes, so this gets into the concept, and this is one of my most fun topics. I wonder if I should announce who I'm going to be going on tour with. I'm actually going to be doing some speaking. So I'm excited for that. I don't know how well I'm going to do. People are probably going to be like, Pangburn bombs again on stage. Front page of the whatever. But whatever. It'll be fun. But anyways, this scientist who I'm going to be touring with, one of my favorite scientists of all time, science communicators and just interesting scientists. This is what I like talking to him about nothing. What nothing is scientifically, and then also what absolute nothing is. Now, based on our understanding of the cosmos, could absolute nothing actually exist? Or does the potential for something always exist? And that in itself is something. This is something I'm going to talk often with this scientist about, because I find it a fascinating question and mind-boggling. MBL McKinsey says God is abstinence, like unicorns or Harry Potter. It doesn't mean is fantasy, but it means that does not have the same properties as humans or numbers. We are in the universe of existence. What does all that mean? Scott Lovenberg says infinities do have carnality, so it's worse on the other end of the spectrum. Yeah, so the simple fact that that a state of potential, that's what I call it, the state of potential. Is it possible for this that we find ourselves living in this cosmos? Is it possible for a state of potential even to never exist? Because obviously a state of potential, to me, a state of potential always needs to exist, or else there wouldn't be anything, right? So I don't know. I like state of potential. That's what I want to talk about with this scientist. We've gotten a little bit off track from the video, but I'm liking where the chat's going here, so I'm zeroed in on that. Remember to subscribe, guys, and hit that like button. This has been a great chat. I'm really, really excited, and I'm really enjoying it. How are we at for time? 1:45? Okay, we're doing good. We're doing good. MBL Mackenzie says, numbers subsist. Logic figures they exist regardless of any physical objects. 2 is a symbol which represents a quality of space, or a quality of matter, or quantity of matter. I base this stuff on my understanding of the ontological model, right? Keith Connolly, no progress is made by shutting people down. The people who angrily shut others down are exposing their own vulnerability to bad ideas. Correct. Couldn't be more correct. Keith. Welcome back, Keith. Nice to hear from you again. Learning skepticism can dispel the fear of spreading bad ideas. Yes, it can. Skepticism is the way we decipher bullshit from reality. It's the tool we use. It's the tool we use to engage with the scientific method. It's the tool. It really is the foundational tool on how to think as a human being in modern day. Scott Lovenberg says the nothing conversation. I can't wait. That's such an awesome conversation. I love talking about nothing. It's what interests me. I can listen to seminars that go on for hours. Sometimes I am not educated enough to understand the terminology, and I want to get more educated on it, but to understand the precise terminology that cosmologists are using when they're talking about nothing. But it fucking excites me beyond belief talking about nothing. It's awesome. MBL Mackenzie, we are in the existence universe. Numbers and logic are in the subsistence, and God is in the absistence. Well, if you're going to claim that, you're going to have to demonstrate it. You're going to have to demonstrate all that, MBL Mackenzie. Evidence. We need evidence. Sense29 says, that is definitely some mind-blowing shit, the whole absolute nothing concept. Yes, so it's like, okay, fuck, this stuff gets me charged. I'm not a guy that needs cocaine or drugs. Maybe the odd drink once in a while, but like when I think of nothing, it's like, okay, and this is why some scientists, I'm not going to start naming scientists because I'm going to name the scientists, I'm going to blow the surprise. But when people start talking about nothing, you can see physicists their eyebrows starts really raising up. Well, are you talking about nothing in the scientific sense, or are you talking about nothing in the hypothesis of there being absolute nothing, including time, space, matter, everything? What I think is that models, as far as our understanding of the cosmos gets in human understanding, I think it's always going to point to a eternal space. A space that essentially is boundless and has always existed and will always exist. I don't see a place for this is where it really fucks up my mind. I don't see a place for, I gotta take off my hat for this. Getting serious here. I don't see a place where a state of potential could not exist. The state of potential always has to exist. Because in order for a spark to flick, there had to be potential for that spark to flick. And then if someone's to say, no, the potential came into existence at the precise exact time that flicker happened, it's just too much of a logical leap that my ape mind cannot comprehend. Maybe one day this will be demonstrated, but it's just, this is the kind of stuff I pull my hair out in excitement about. The great father Descartes, Isaiah says. Farmer Bob, 96, says, is there nothing? Isn't the universe a big field of energy, so there is always something? Well, I mean, the universe in which we exist, the standing theory is that there was nothing before the Big Bang. No space, time, matter, nothing. And then at the moment of the Big Bang, time, everything came into existence. But, I mean, obviously there are new schools of thought of what pre-Big Bang state means or what it is. And maybe by nothing we mean nothing in our own universe, and this is where multiverse theory comes in. When multiverse theory comes in, it's like, oh no, well maybe there are bubble universes and ours is just a new sparked bubble that bubbles off of this other universe. And it's just a process that happens. And maybe that's the case. Maybe it's a multiverse. But then you start asking the question: well, how many multiverses are there? Are these just infinite? Is the space in which the multiverse, or the construct in which the multiverse exists in, is that infinite, or is it not infinite, but it exists in an infinite state of potential? This is all very, very exciting things to think about, but also very frustrating because the mathematics in which we need to test this, or the evidence collection capabilities to test this kind of stuff, we just don't have yet. This is why the answer right now is I don't know. But it's very fun to logically think of this and try to apply logic. And of course, when you apply logic to quantum mechanics, this is many physicists say this. Once someone says they understand quantum mechanics, you don't know what you're talking about. You may say that I understand the probabilities that are illuminated based on some of the equations that have been put together, but that's not really understanding the function. It's only predicting a probability. There's no understanding really there. It's getting better, but damn, there's a lot of work to be done in that area, in particle physics in general. MBL McKenzie says, but circles don't exist, but things in shape of circles do exist. Circles with their property. If I draw a circle on a page, it exists. That's a label we've made for that thing that I've drawn on a page. Isaiah says, or the bread analogy, each slice is a universe that is part of a cosmic loaf. Yeah, I know that analogy exists, but the thing is that this doesn't get us any closer to the fundamental problem, which is the infinite. If it's infinite, I think the picture is much more clear, because there's always been an infinite amount of space, and likely with that an infinite amount of matter. So then we at least have an explanatory power as to where it came from. But to a certain degree, I'm not saying we're if we get to that point we're able to make a claim of, like, well, I mean, it didn't come from anywhere. That's the thing. Like, it didn't come from anywhere. It's just always been there. State of potentials have always been there. MBL McKenzie says, Zents29 says, as far as I know, the Big Bang doesn't say that we come from nothing. It says that a singularity expanded billions of years ago, not a creation event, but an expansion of something that already existed. Yeah, you listen to Stephen Hawking talk about the state at the Big Bang. like time didn't exist, but obviously all this stuff is relative. But listen to how he describes that state. And obviously, this is all just based on measuring matter moving apart from one another, and then you do the math, and everything fits back into this infinitesimal, this very small, tiny point, infinitely dense, I guess you could say. But yeah, all this thinking is making my head hurt. MBL Mackenzie says, exist the picture of your circle, but circle its properties. They are beyond the realm of experience. Yeah, because I'm putting a substance on it, and I'm just labeling that shape I've made on a piece of paper as a circle. It's not just logic. The thing actually exists that I've created. It's not just logic. Mackenzie says, subsistence equals neither logic or reason. God or something that has their own rules. Yeah, if you're going to claim that God or something has its own rules, you have to demonstrate it. Keith Connolly says, is nothing linked infinite? Are we more fascinated by infinite because of our pleasure drive? Yeah, I mean, all of this is filtering through our pleasure drives, right? And obviously the people who are going to be thinking about this have it's very pleasurable for them to have truths that they believe in that are based on the evidence of reality, and they pass through our model of our foundation of skepticism and logic. And obviously this is a very pleasurable pursuit for me. So I could be wrong about the infinite, but I want to know what is. I have that's what drives my pleasure drive. At least when I reflect on it. Key says, would we be equally fascinated with nothing if we didn't desire to accumulate knowledge and experience? No, I don't even think we would think of that concept. I think it's such a nothing is almost by definition nonsensical when you're thinking about it from just a pure reasonability perspective. If you were to claim 1,000 years ago that, well, before all of this came, there was nothing existed. You're the crazy guy in the street shaking his fist at a ghost that isn't actually there. It's like no one's taking this person seriously. But these are ideas that that are held or at least are placeholders for things that we need more information on. Scott Lovenberg says, I know we got off track, but darn good conversation. Thanks, Pangburn. I love this format. Yeah, I really enjoy this too. This is awesome. Okay, what are we at? I think, let's see. Yeah, we're coming up on 2 hours. I think we are going to cut it there, guys. I really enjoyed having conversations with you guys tonight. Come and join me on Twitter. Follow me. I'm at the Pangburn. I'll follow you guys back. Remember, if you're interested in submitting and being a contributor to the new War of Ideas online publication, send us an email, info@pang-burn.com, and I want to hear your pitches of what you guys want to write about, and think provocative, think ideas that you want to put out there, that you've had, that you want people to challenge, that you want to have conversations about. So yeah, write to us, and I hope to, and remember to subscribe on YouTube here. Really helps out the channel, really helps keep the engine going. If you want to become a patron, go over to patreon.com/Pangburn. We have new perks available to our patrons. Check it out. What else? Subscribe to our newsletter. Too much rum and eggnog. Subscribe to our newsletter at pang-burn.com. That's where you're going to be able to find everything about what we do and what's coming up. I really enjoyed this conversation. Zence, MBL McKenzie, Farmer Boy, Keith Connolly, Scott Lovenberg, Isaiah, all you guys, thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you for those who tuned in. We will get through more video next time. After we've made it through this video, we will move on to Jordan Peterson versus Matt Dillahunty, because Matt Dillahunty's coming up on March 1st, New York City. I hope you guys can make it there. I'm so excited for this event. I am going to be on the edge of my seat this whole time. This is one of my top 10 events I've wanted to put together, and I think it's very important for this election season coming up. But anyways, everyone keep well. I really enjoyed this, and keep thinking about nothing, and let art and science inspire. Good night, guys.